Hi there. Welcome to the deep end. March 19th, the evening of March 19th. Spring is 2 hours and 38 minutes away. And before you say it to us, yes, it has been snowing all day here in Western New York. We have a couple inches. It's brutal out, but it's been very mild, actually, I have to say, in our defense. Mike Shakeup, Adam Crowhurst, pleased to be joined, as always, by Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo, the gatekeeper, high stakes data. We'll talk about trends after the combine, before the draft, free agency, mostly over, at least what's relevant. We'll talk about some things that we think are interesting, what's happening in drafts, high stakes, and more over the next little while here. So should be interesting. You can watch us on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get them. We'd love for you to like the show, even if you don't. Hopefully you do. Mike and Adam with Darren Armani. Welcome to the deep end.
Big night, big day in the Krautwurst house today, guys. I know. Well, listen, we'll get into the fantasy stuff, but Kyle Pitts has decided to keep the number 8. It is a big day in the fan. I don't have to go spend tuition money to get another jersey, Kyle Pitts jersey. So I'm super excited about that. Convinced Kirk Cousins to take 18. So love it, absolutely love it.
You were going to do that?
No.
Buy a new one? No. Darren, he was going to tape Cousins over the back, I think is what he was going to, duct tape.
Or electrical tape. You could have taped, if he went to 18, then you could have just put a masking tape on.
Sure.
That plenty of times. People just
or just hold on to it for 15 years till it's a throwback, and then it's fine to wear again.
It appears that you are wearing this jersey.
I am. That's right. Come on. I mean, there it is. Right? It's an homage.
Kind of unusual that he did keep the number. When does that ever happen?
I thought it was over.
A signing of this caliber. I mean, wouldn't you even think maybe Kyle Pitts, just for luck, would try something else?
That's what I said. A fresh start, something like that. Like, there's no way he's keeping 8. But
I think Cousins is probably he seems mild mannered. If that was like Aaron Rodgers coming in there, it would have been a different story.
Well, Cousins has enough money too. I mean, he's not gonna, he could have bought this thing for whatever he wanted.
Right.
He'd be traded for Jermichael Finley by now if he were if it were Rodgers. But actually, Darren, like the Jets with Mike Williams, man, if Rodgers stays on his feet, as far as I know, Williams is not a former Packer. Williams, Garrett Wilson, Hall, maybe even Brock Bowers in the first round. I mean, that's interesting.
It looks good on paper, right? But 40-year-old quarterback coming off Achilles, it just, you hope it works for him. But I mean, it's the Jets, and you could see it that maybe falling apart easier than coming together for him. But just based on their history. But
you guys have a team. Sorry. Do you have a team? I mean, we didn't talk about this in advance, but I was thinking about the Jets here, that you're drafting the most often, Adam, or you're sort of like noticing, kind of the most excited about in fantasy. I might have said this last week. For me, it's Green Bay. I just think everything's affordable with Green Bay. They made the running back change. That's one guy we'll talk about tonight, the move to Josh Jacobs and what has happened to him in drafts since that all happened after the release of Aaron Jones too. But you don't really have to start right away. You can't get frozen out of Green Bay, really, as long as maybe you get the running back. But Adam, I mean, Love and the receivers come pretty easily if you want to do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing now, getting the stacking the teams that you can for pretty cheap. I mean, Wicks might even be the guy to have there, and he's going as like their 4th receiver or something. I like the Cardinals. They're cheap too. I've been doing a little bit of that, and it's fun because you can get, Harrison Jr. because he's probably going there. Although there's a lot of steam on Neighbors lately. I mean, we had Cody on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he preferred Neighbors over Harrison, and now you're kind of hearing in the circles that might be a thing. So, but yeah, it's fun to kind of draft Harrison, although he's going first out of like every Cardinal in the whole thing, which is second round receivers. It's wild.
Yeah, I for some reason I keep getting draft picks in the back half of the first round, so I seem to be getting a lot of Lions and a lot of Jacksonville. I like the values on the Jacksonville players. They keep falling into my lap, so I'm taking them.
Harrison, where are we talking pretty much for him? Mid-second so far?
Yeah. Mid-second. The last 5 days, actually, he's more of a third-round pick, an early third. It's going to go back and forth, but it seems like he's lost a little bit of the steam. People are still pumped up for him, but maybe people have backed off just a little bit. So
is he not doing anything? I'm sure obviously he's working out, but is he not doing any public workouts at all? Because I feel like as soon as somebody lays eyes on him catching a go route or something from a standstill quarterback with no defense, I feel like he'll go right back up where he was.
He went to the combine, right? But he just didn't.
He didn't run. I don't think he's doing the pro day either. I think he's just doing his own thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's hurting him. Because 3 months ago he was a definitive the number one guy out of those three. Now the other two are the sort of in the conversation. So maybe him laying low is sort of, not that people are backing off him, but just the other guys. It's creating an opening for other guys. They liking what they're seeing. So, we'll see.
The players who have nothing to lose, we've seen it from the quarterbacks, Harrison, Neighbors, sort of bowing out of the combine, basically doing at the combine what I would be doing if I were at the combine, which is like nothing. I won't let them wait. I won't make them they won't make me run. The two rookie receivers, Darren, that were on your list of movers in the upward direction here recently are Xavier Worthy, who broke the speed record at the combine, and Ladd McConkey, where there seems to be a lot of or some late first round buzz. Man, the second half of the first round, or even starting where you want to put Brian Thomas in mock drafts, right on down. The two Texas receivers, McConkey here, Pearsall even maybe, Leggett. There's so many names. You're seeing the movement on Worthy with the speed, and then McConkey, who's got even the athletic height plus the production at Georgia. What does it mean to you so far, Darren?
To me, it's dynasty mind just creeps into the redraft now, and like they're pushing up these rookies just purely based on combine performance. It's just like if we put together the list of the biggest risers, and it's all guys who it was all based on combine performance, the speed guys, and that doesn't always necessarily translate to performance in the season, but they got nothing else to go by. And because it's the dynasty players that are the most active right now, so that kind of like skews sort of the activity. And then once the draft happens, then everything sort of readjusts. But that's what you're seeing. Just everybody's pushing up the speed guys. And counter that, the guys who are getting crushed in ADP are the guys who ran too slow or did poorly on the various drills. I think who was one of the guys that
Troy Franklin,
Jatavian Sanders. Sort of he lost a little bit. See the guy he decided to only do three. Yeah, he only just wanted to do 3 events. That was
tight end from Texas.
Yeah. So he dropped a little bit. Bucky Irving ran slow. Audric Esteem ran slow. So those guys, they took a hit. So and if you've been doing this long enough, you kind of know. So if you want to get the shares of the rookies, like you want to do it before the combine. And now for me, it's like, this is where I'll kind of back off of them because I've already like got the advantage before the combine. Now you're going to get an inflation of the value or a decrease. And now at this point, I'm just going to wait till the draft and then start picking them up again. And in the meantime, I'm not, over pursuing anybody or, totally fading anyone. So it's just kind of it's.
When you were doing that, how would you rank them? Like, did you have your own rankings, or would you just make sure to sort of disperse the rookies? Because for a lot of us, the less you follow college football, the more brand new those names to you are. Okay, well, schools, I can see the stats. I can look up anybody else's rankings. How would you go about, you've got it in your mind before the combine to push them up a little bit. How would you decide which ones? And how?
Yeah, they're kind of slotted. Personally, I will avoid the top guys because the real value is going to be in the guys like 10th round or later. I'll pound receivers between the 10th and the 20th rounds, and then just, capitalize on any bump that they get. And then not so much of the guys that are being highly pursued. I forget who it was last year. Like JSN, like everybody was paying up for JSN, right? And then that didn't really help. I'd have to go back and look at the win rates, but the people who overly paid for JSN, that didn't really pay off for him. So that's kind of the mind. If you do it long enough, you kind of know the sweet spot is take the long shots because they're cheap, and then capitalize on it.
Well, Adam, let's talk about him if we can for a second here. Like, what is there a lesson in Smith and Jigba? I mean, he was definitely hyped. Ohio State, we have that with Harrison, both predicted to be the first receiver taken in the draft. Smith and Jigba ended up going, I think, 20th in the NFL draft, but there was plenty of talk about him as a top 10 pick, at this stage of the game. We had Jamar Chase happen and other rookies do really well. So there was, the landing spot was the key to Smith and Jigba. I don't know, like, is there because we don't want to compare him to Harrison, right? Like Harrison is more expensive, same school, but, late second round and maybe probably a top 5 pick. What's the takeaway from JSN for you?
Yeah. I mean, everybody loved him coming out, crafty route runner, went to a great school. But then, like a lot of the first round receivers, we hated the landing spots because they were like buried on these depth charts. And so I think that was part of it. And, the almost fully healthy seasons from Metcalf and Lockett, I think really hurt him too. I mean, he never got a chance to really get out there and shine. He started to come around. They started to favor him towards the end. I forget what the number was, but over the last 3 weeks, his percentage of like first read looks in the offense went up and up. So they're obviously trying to tailor him more in there. But I think Lockett getting older, we have a new offensive coordinator there now. So, we'll see how that works. But yeah, it's tough. Like Darren was saying, a lot of times you want to get value on these guys pre-draft, but then if they don't go to the landing spot that you want, maybe you didn't get the value you were looking for. And the same thing that could happen now with these receivers. I mean, you're seeing them, like Darren said, you're seeing them flying up the board here. You got Marvin Harrison going to 2-3 turn, but it might be better to take Troy Franklin in the 11th, Xavier Worthy in the 11th, Ladd McConkey in the 12th, where these guys are going right now. And in Fantasy Mojo's ADP for never too early best ball drafts. It's like, yeah, maybe you take the shot on those guys and wait to see, just be safe. I mean, how much higher up is Marvin Harrison going to go? You know what I mean? He's going to get into the first round? Like, no. So it's like, you might as well just wait.
He almost did. It was that out of control where he was getting drafted in the, that the front end of the second round. And just purely on speculation, that seemed extreme. So it kind of calmed down a little bit. But JSN, if looking at his chart, and it makes sense, I think the hope was that Lockett was going to go somewhere, and then they re-signed him, and then JSN's ADP it's probably down, at least like a round or two since Lockett signed. So, but still, I was a middling pick.
Yeah.
Well, this, the idea with the rookies, like you were saying before, try to find those lesser known ones and get them before we get to the combine and see what happens there. That seems to work. I'm wondering just how predictive it is with the combine. Like, it's hard to really pin down, obviously, when you don't have the NFL draft yet. What happens to Xavier Worthy? What is that 40 time worth to the NFL? Maybe it makes him a first round pick. Just so many variables. What you're doing here, though, of course, Darren, you would know this as well as anyone. The calendar of the tournament is so important, where like now if you have somebody like Jalen Wright or Guarendo is maybe a better example as a running back who sometimes probably wasn't being drafted at all, and then you get the excellent workout, and okay, so somebody might have been drafting him in the 20th round. Maybe Wright's a better example as a later pick. Now you think maybe he belongs somewhere around 13 to 15 or something like that. You're behind whoever it was that picked him in round 20. So you have to sort of balance all this with the calendar of the tournament. And I don't know, it's enough to make your head spin.
Yeah, it's nice to have, although, well, for Guarendo, he wasn't even being drafted. and then all of a sudden, like, he popped onto the radar and people started scooping him up. That might be more of people not having shares at all, so they want to get the shares of the guy. So overcompensating for something like that. But I kind of think that it's a little overvalued. Like, oh, so I got him in the 19th round. I'm going to be better off than somebody in the 13th round. I mean, at the end of the day, when you toss out all the players who sort of don't do anything, it doesn't. If you have that guy on your roster, in a tournament like this, it's just so random. What happens in that final week is really what it comes down to. It's not like the 3-week sprint where it's maybe weighted a little bit more heavily of that the cumulative performance. But this is like you got to get in, so you could just having that guy on your roster can get you in, and then that's really a crapshoot. That final week, you just have to have the guys who go. 2 years ago, it was Daniel Jones, and I forget who it was last year. You had to have that magic combination of players that wasn't even really correlated at all. It was just like you had the right guys. You unlocked the puzzle for that. So.
Listen, don't say it was uncorrelated out here in these streets. Okay,
correlation season's coming.
That's right. Correlation season might be here. You're right. It is coming.
Correlation bros.
Wait till the schedule night comes out. It's a hot night here in the deep end.
Okay? Oh, the schedule night. I mean, you should see. We've got the streamers and the trumpet players. Everybody's out for the schedule night.
Week 17 correlation.
The most wonderful time of the year. We'll get into some specific players whose circumstances have changed through free agency here as we continue with Fantasy Mojo. Darren Armani, subscribe to his site. High stakes players, you can't live without it. Most of you probably know, but maybe not all of you. FantasyMojo.com for a subscription. You get the recent draft board, all the draft boards, all the ADP from all the different tournaments that are out there at the FFPC, and analysis from Darren throughout the season. With Darren Armani, Mike Shakeup, and Adam Krautwurst here in the deep end. Back after this timeout and a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by PlayerProfiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
Back in the deep end with Fantasy Mojo, talking about some of the risers and fallers here in ADP over the last few weeks with all the free agency move. It was quite a week last week. We started, Darren, with some big hits at running back, which was surprising to a lot of us to see DeAndre Swift right away, Tony Pollard, and of course, eventually Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia. Josh Jacobs also in there to Green Bay. Among your biggest movers upward is Jacobs. Maybe he's the one that was and now is still drafted the earliest of the players who have moved the most into the end of round 2. How do we feel about Jacobs at that price, and what would Aaron Jones have been worth had he been sort of staying in Green Bay and they don't make that move? But on Jacobs, what about his ascension here?
Yeah, it's kind of like they're treated differently, right? So because Jacobs went to Green Bay, it just seems like he's being drafted higher than Aaron Jones ever would have been. And I'm not sure what the bias against Jones is, but it's kind of funny because Jacobs is a guy who over the past couple of years, like, he's one of those players, if you drafted him, people were calling you the donkey because he's no good. And You know, that was a figment of that really shouldn't have happened what he did with the Raiders. But now that he's in Green Bay, I guess it's all about his location. So it's him, and it's the same thing with him and Henry. He was dust 3 years ago, but they're loving him in Baltimore. But yeah, so that's a little rich for me at the end of the second for Jacobs.
I'll tell you what, I think like the running back theme just runs throughout, which is great. I think maybe there's a little bit of an overreaction to these veteran running backs, because I think a player's first instinct might be, well, how much money is it? And well, why would the Packers, the Eagles, the Ravens, etc., Tennessee with Tyjae Spears already there, spend this much money on these veteran running backs? That kind of came out of nowhere. Well, maybe, we know that NFL teams don't always do the optimal thing. The cap always goes up, so they had more money to spend. There's some cachet in it. I think that might have played into Barkley a little bit, because that was out of character for the Eagles. And I don't know which of these necessarily means these guys will play bell cow 3-down roles, because there still are Spears in Tennessee is maybe the best example. I think there still are talented, younger running backs on the roster. Running backs get hurt anyway. I mean, I'm fine drafting these guys here and there, but I'm careful, at least the way I would put it, Adam, is not to overreact to the contract. Because, I mean, we talk about, you and I are on WGR, like which players did well in free agency. They kind of all did well. Everybody does well in free agency. The teams have more money to dole out. The running back draft is considered soft, A, B, and C. So here's $27 million to DeAndre Swift. We'll see how much he plays. He doesn't have to play 3 downs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's strange in 2024 to have to say, or here we are in 2024, we have to say, like, it's okay to pay a running back. It's okay to have a good running back on your team. Like, this whole thing where, like, you don't want a good running back because then you give him the ball, I think is, like, kind of true. But, like, if you have a team that's already loaded, like, look at the Niners. The Niners didn't lose the Super Bowl, and they haven't lost the last 2 years because they have a running back and they give him the ball. They lose because Brock Purdy isn't that good. And so you give a guy like Saquon to a team that's already loaded with a quarterback like maybe Jalen Hurts, or if McCaffrey or if the Bills would have gotten Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying they should have paid him all that money, but we get this thing in our heads where we don't want, good teams to have good running backs, so yes, I think we don't want to underreact to it either. I think now it's March, March 19th? Like, we don't know what's going on with these teams yet. There's more rookies that need to be drafted. There's more free agents that need to be signed. But the idea of a guy like Saquon in Philly, and Darren, I'd love to hear your take because you're obviously the Eagles guy, but like he could be, if he's healthy, he could be absolutely sensational. It's the real question is he going to get the goal line work? And Mike, to your point with the money is, well, how are they going to pay this guy all this money and not give him the goal line work? But we can all, if you draft him based on that, I could just see myself watching every primetime game they're going to be on Thursday night, Monday night, whatever, and going, I can't believe I freaking drafted. So how were they not giving him the ball? They're paying him $26 million to have him sit on the bench and watch Jalen Hurts tush push it in, but it could happen. So I think we got to listen to some coach speak on that. And again, we talked about this last week, Mike, and I think you made a great look a couple of weeks ago in the sense that, like, Lamar Jackson doesn't run the ball at the goal line anymore. They turn around and they hand the ball off to Gus Edwards and now Derrick Henry. Like, Derrick Henry is going to get a ton of work. We know that because they're trying to save Lamar's body. Maybe the Eagles are transitioning to that. Maybe they're trying to, I know it's narrative street, but maybe they're trying to transition to, we don't want Hurts to die, because the Eagles stunk. And Darren, you could have said they stunk the last 6 weeks of the season. So
yeah, that was exactly it. I mean, that they want to preserve Hurts. You can't have him. You saw what ended up happening with the tush push was, after teams started giving up on, like, trying to stop it, they started taking cheap shots, jumping to snap, and it was just getting too hazardous. And then Hurts was wearing down because he was, they didn't have the pounder. So I think they're going to be more selective when they do that. Saquon's he's not gonna get overused like the Giants. Like that was all they had, so they just ran him as much as they could. So I think it's going to be a good balance. It speaks well to Saquon's chances to stay healthier, and it's going to save Hurts. So I think it's a good move. I've been actually, like I said, I seem to be getting picks in the back half of the first round. I've been taking Saquon. I'm kind of buying into it. I'm not really afraid of the injury. And actually a lot of I mentioned this to Mike earlier. A lot of the running backs are sort of there's this running back. There's a thirst for running backs right now. In the first round, the first 18 picks, so the first round and a half, right this year we're seeing. I think I broke it out. Yeah, so the first round and a half in 2024, there's more running backs than wide receivers being drafted. Last year, there was 10 wide receivers to 6 running backs. So we're getting 3 more running backs and 2 less wide receivers going off in the first 18 picks. And then it just the tier just drops off. Then you if you're like getting drafted 1 through 6, you kind of don't know what to do, right? Because that's where you're seeing it could be Derrick Henry, it could be Josh Jacobs. That's what the ADP says. Nico Collins, DJ Moore. You're kind of in no man's land for a while. I started the draft today at $35 slim, and I was in pick 12. I took Kyron because I'm kind of buying into that now. I was a little hesitant, but they didn't pick anybody up. So I'm like, all right, for now, he might be the guy. Kyron, Saquon, and then at 312, Derrick Henry was still there, but he's also going like at the end of the second round. So then I went Kyron, Saquon, Derrick Henry, and then I took Debo. And Josh Jacobs still hadn't been picked yet in this draft I'm in. So it's all over the map once you get past that first round and a half.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, Saquon's going right here on the ADP for never too early. He's going as RB8, like behind Achane. Like I definitely would take him ahead of Achane for sure. You got I'd probably take him ahead of JT too. I mean, he has the opportunity if he stays healthy, and I know this with everybody. If he stays healthy, but if he stays healthy, I think he's a top 5 running back lock. And the Kyron take, I wasn't on Kyron. I hate guys that I was all over Kyron last year, 14th round, whatever. And now I have to pay top dollar, but they're talking about them having the best interior offensive line in the entire league. They just free agent Maulers in there, and there's still the draft to go. So, is he very good? Are any of these guys very good?
So hope it doesn't turn into Cam Akers 2.0.
Right. That's it. That's it. I would rather take a receiver there, but you can make the argument for Kyron too.
I want to go on record saying I would put Barkley third on that list behind Achane and Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
Because of the money point. I mean, he played, Darren, you referenced it. He played 80% of the snaps for the Giants. I mean, he was their offense. I keep coming back to just because teams are spending that money on running backs. I mean, they're building the best roster they can. There's some role for them. It's not 1978, but there is. Still, I'm not sure Philadelphia is the best example of the bunch. Tennessee's easier. Chicago's even easier, where I still think you see a timeshare. It's a longer season than ever. And, Barkley at 27, 7th year, there's just reasons for me to want to bet against him. I'm not avoiding him at all costs, but I'll take Achane's youth and even Taylor's relative to Barkley over those other guys, not because I think they'll necessarily play all the time. Achane is somebody by his build. Like, you can't expect him to have like a big workload or anything, but those explosive plays and then all of it put together, again, like we talked about earlier, a lot of this is, where has the market been? What has changed? All the different things, the variables that go into these tournaments. And I just think it might be an overreaction to the money that those guys got in free agency. I don't know where Jacobs fits into that exactly. Not all those teams, especially Philadelphia, have obvious, complementary backs. But very interesting to see what you're talking about with the balance of running backs in the top round and a half, though. I mean, Achane is not really comfortable in that zone. Kyren Williams is also not really comfortable. Barkley at least is more familiar, but drafters are going there.
And
I mean, that's my
going there early
Sorry, go
too.
ahead, Darren.
Yeah, in the past 2 days, I saw Bijan Robinson in the never too early. And these drafts, if you're in a draft right now, you got like 8 guys with badges. These aren't jokers in there just freewheeling like a $5, league. I saw Bijan go 1, and then the last 2 never too early. He went 1, and then he went number 2. And then I saw 3 out of the first 4 picks. It was Brees, Bijan, and CMC. So there's like something's happened to the top tier running back. There's some doubt or ambiguity. Cousins left, so Jefferson is sort of a question mark.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, with Burrow. So it's kind of all over right now for the wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Mike makes the point about timeshare. Like Bijan will probably be in a timeshare. He scares me. HN will certainly be in a timeshare. So there's a couple of guys ahead of him that'll be in timeshares. And listen, at this point, we probably want Saquon. We don't want our running backs with every touch because they won't make it. So I'm okay with a timeshare. But again, a lot of speculation, a lot of narratives, a lot of whatever. We'll see. I'm just hoping Giants Eagles isn't week 18 so that we actually have it for fantasy points on the schedule because we'll at least get one. I want them both.
Right.
Was it 2 years ago they played weeks 16 and 18? Like the 2 games were both right at the end of the season. I mean, at least one of them would be in the fantasy playoffs.
I remember we kept playing the Cowboys at the end of the year, and the game was meaningless at home. And like it looked good on paper. It's like we can't wait till like that Eagles Cowboys game, the final week, and then everybody sat, and it was like,
But by the way, that streak is still going, isn't it? Where no team has won the NFC East twice in a row since more than 20 years ago. But Philadelphia losing to Dallas last year, I think, continued that streak.
I was not aware of that.
Interesting.
Like 2002 or something is the last time a team repeated in the NFC East. Well, I'll say too, in terms of underdog, I mean, I haven't drafted a ton there, but enough to want to say the seeming reality of the last year or two where the receivers dry up is still true. Like that's happening again, no matter where I'm drafting. Adam will tell you I'm always drafting early over at underdog, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I want 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 7 because in those middle rounds there are some interesting running back plays, including Spears, who we talked about it or I mentioned in Tennessee, and I mean all the rookies at running back. Who is, if you know, Darren, which rookie running back has the earliest or the highest ADP right now? Is there even sort of a consensus on that?
It is Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks. Well, Brooks pulled ahead of Trey Benson. They're kind of side by side.
It's a group of rookies.
The wide receivers, like the other thing about the running backs this year is, man, you get to like the 12th round or something, and you're like, should I draft Roschon Johnson or can I take Ladd McConkey? Like,
right.
The viable running backs are drying up. Like you're just really just taking a complete dart throw. The wide receivers are so deep this year. Like I feel good about the wide receivers, as giving me something almost to the end of the draft. Whereas the running backs, I'm like, all right, do I want Khalil Herbert? Or I could have had Curtis Samuel, Dontavian Wicks, Jahan Dotson. You know what I mean? So if you're short running backs by the time you get that late, I've done enough drafts where like, man, I should have grabbed an extra running back or two like earlier than putting it off. So fair
point. But in a draft like this, what is this going to be? 20 rounds? Never too early? Is it 18 or 20 rounds? 20 rounds?
20, yep.
So, I mean, you're talking about that slim. That's different. It's a confined league where you drafted 3 in a row to start. What about, Darren, is your like optimal breakdown then? You want to be done at running back by what? Maybe 15?
I probably want 5 by round 15. And then I'll usually just go 6. I don't even feel like to take 7. It seems like a diminishing rate of returns if I go beyond 7 because I can get viable players at the very end of the draft, but the running backs are just Alexander Madison, Damian Pierce. I don't want that Drek. I mean, there's still good. There's still good receive. I could get,
Michael
Malachi
Thomas.
Corley.
Come on.
You know, just there's better dart throws late. So, and it could change once we get to draft, things are going to change again. But right now, it feels like there's just a scarcity of usable running backs for me.
There still are a few veteran running backs yet to settle in the market. What Dallas does will be a game changer, I think, in drafts. Buffalo probably needs one more, and some other teams too. We're looking at Zeke still, or CEH, guys like that, but maybe not big needle movers. At the end of drafts, speaking of that, this is maybe more of an underdog point, but not necessarily, because no tight end premium over there. But I love, Adam will tell you how the tight ends line up at the end, because you have, a pretty good group to start with. Most players are getting their top tight ends fairly early. There's a lot of interesting choices. But at the end, like Jonnu Smith is somebody in Miami who I think he's the starter, and maybe that's nothing, but there's a guy who he's an athlete. Maybe there's value there. Gesicki in Cincinnati, good landing spot for him. Maybe more of a pass catching role, a more pronounced role than he's had. Even Everett in Chicago. I mean, yes, these are veterans. Juwan Johnson, Ertz re-signed. I mean, there are some not sexy names, but fair, respectable guys hanging out there in the last few rounds. So you want to avoid running backs at the end. I like to tack on a couple tight ends at the end myself.
Yeah, and in this format, in the best ball, because all these guys you just mentioned, they can easily get you. They could spike for 15 to 20 points. Like, they're not going to do it every, like, in a managed league where you got to pick the players. I don't want to start any of those guys. But here, you can throw together 2-3 tight ends after the 12th round, and I think you're going to be fine. The elite tight end approach is not, it's still powerful, but it's not as essential maybe as it was in prior years.
Right. Give me one that I can stack, and then I'll try to fill it in at the end. Adam?
This will be an interesting year for tight ends. I mean, here we are looking at the ADP, no tight end in the first round. Ever since I've been doing FFPC, it's always been like, you have a Gronk or a Jimmy Graham or, a Kelsey, somebody, Aaron Hernandez at one point, like up there that you could just lock in. And here we are, like Sam Laporta, tight end one already. Kelsey's kind of fading. It's just kind of a weird. Andrews is at tight end 4. Brock Bowers in round 5 is a guy who don't even know what team he's going to as a rookie. Like, I think that the injuries and kind of no one has kind of popped yet as the I guess that would maybe Laporta and McBride, but they're just not super proven. I think Laporta's probably a lock, but Trey McBride's interesting. Kincaid, I love Kincaid last year, attached to Josh Allen. So I think he'll get better, but I don't know. Normally there's like 4, 5, 6 tight ends where you can just, yes, I'm locked in. I need one of these 5. I don't think people are going to say, I need, Dalton Kincaid. Like, I need Trey McBride, so it's just an interesting year to see how that's going to work out. Hockenson obviously would be much higher, but he's coming off the injury. So I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, it'd be worth to take Pitts. And I've probably owned Pitts on 3 teams in the past, since he was a rookie. But now this year, I think I'll be grabbing some of them because he's reasonably priced and the situation's a little better for him. So
that's how you win these hardway leagues. You simply avoid Kyle Pitts when everybody else is so excited.
All the guys in those leagues, they're dynasty guys, and that's what I was saying. They're chasing. I'm just picking up value because they're strongly opinionated, and I was like, all right, I'll take the guys. Like, I got Derrick Henry like in the 4th round last year when he was like going in second, like 2. It's a different dynamic. That thing's a little bit different. So there's a lot of psychology in that league.
I would just add on tight ends, even those mid-tier names that we've never been excited about have some interesting value, like Njoku, Schultz with the contract in Houston and maybe a great offense. Ingram, I mean, he put down a nice season. These are guys that I feel like in the past you kind of had to settle for, if that, or you just pass. But where they go on this chart, if you're not able to see it, rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, players like that. Goddard's in that range. Pitts, who you mentioned, Ferguson, some interesting plays at at tight end. One more subject tonight. Like what about quarterbacks so far? What's different this year? Josh Allen most of the time is QB1 as we see on this chart. Pretty typical, Darren, in terms of who the top guys are and when they go, or are there some interesting differences from the past?
I think people kind of backed off. Like what you usually see at the very beginning of the draft season is people push up the quarterbacks because there's uncertainty as to who the starters are going to be, when the season comes. So, but they're not really getting pushed up this year at all. They're just kind of, this is like, it looks like might look like in August or something.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what that, I'm not sure what the reason for that is. Just, it's weird.
Yeah, I think they got pushed up, the last couple of years, up and up and up. And then last year, it was just the elite guys weren't like Allen was a QB1 again for like the fourth year in a row, but it wasn't by as big of a margin as it was in the past. I think a lot of these guys kind of had, they were good, they were great, but they weren't like league winning great. But I still think they're going fairly high because of, although the fourth run isn't super high, but because of the safety, like Josh Allen, barring injury, is a top 3 quarterback. I mean, he's been a fantasy superstar since the moment he stepped on the field. His rookie year was straight rushing. And then after that, it was everything. And so, I mean, his offense this year could be the best offense he's ever had around him. If they get a first round stud receiver to go along with, another year out of Kincaid, and hopefully is still a good year out of Diggs and that type of thing. They bring in Curtis Samuel. So yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen belongs up there, but I think I'm okay with leaving those other guys in the fourth round. But again, it's like you get to the point where, you just don't know anymore with these guys. It's so hard to predict. Like, do I take a shot, do a coin flip on like a Zay Flowers, or do I take a guy that I know is going to be a top 5 QB, So I think there's something to be said for that. And then I only have to draft one of them. I draft my top 5 quarterback and I don't touch it. It saves me draft picks. I can start stacking or whatever. So yeah, we'll see.
It was a year. It was a year where more of the movement ended up from the quarterback position, like in terms of free agency, happened with backups, like Minshew getting potentially a look at a starting job, or Brissett in New England, whatever Denver is going to do. There's only so many rookies here, Darren, that have any chance to start. So guys like that end up might be it's Adams scenario where you've drafted an elite quarterback. Somebody like that as a backup could potentially suffice.
Yeah, I think there's enough positions. There's enough certainty at quarterback position. People aren't anxious like I got to get these guys because I don't know what's going to happen. And then the other thing that might be playing into the casualness about getting quarterbacks is the COVID thing is not really in play anymore. Like you're like, oh, I got to get that's one of those positions where I don't want to lose a guy for a week because COVID all of a sudden. So if I look at last year's tournament I want to see what the optimal number of quarterbacks was to draft. And at quarterback, the answer is
2
and 4. Actually, 4 had a rate of 19%, which
so
is
punt
QB. Yeah, I don't know.
This is the regular Best-Ball tournament, FFPC.
No, this is never too early.
Okay. Well, there were lots of injuries last year at quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many different weeks where we're just diving. Am I remembering that right? Was that last year, or maybe that was that 2 years ago? It just feels like
it was
recently. Last year. Okay. I mean, the Browns alone started 6 different guys.
Yeah, you think anybody who was playing in this was drafting Aaron Rodgers. So like all those guys lost Aaron Rodgers, like that was a 0. So maybe the guys who overcompensated were rewarded. And then the second, it went 4 was the best, then 2 was next, and then 3. So if you overcompensated, you were good, or if you gambled and made out, then you're rewarded because you had another position player that could have helped you. So that's when you could figure.
Gambled on the right guy. I remember in a home league we do early best ball draft. I had Rodgers, Richardson, and Daniel Jones. So zeros from week 6 on, just
I think that was
You
my
know,
Players versus Joe's team last year. I lost all 3 quarterbacks.
okay. I mean, that maybe
Anyone
this
want-
year we pick 5. I don't know how many we pick. We'll just
Play it
we can't. You can't be too safe. All right, Darren. I mentioned FantasyMojo.com. Hopefully, everybody watching and listening is familiar with that and subscribing. Anything else you want to promote or tell us about that you have coming up?
It's big Dynasty time over for FFPC. So if you play Dynasty, cut downs is the next big thing. Like everybody's got to cut down to 16 players. And one of the cool things that I have is I have the Dynasty cut down tracker. So if you're not sure which guys you want to drop, come take a look at our cut down tracker, and you can see where who the market values. Like I can see, like I was looking, Alexander Madison has already been dropped in like 15%, right? And somebody else like I don't know, but you can look at any player and see like how the market feels about him, especially if you're like one of these guys who are like, well, I might drop him, but I'm gonna like just offer him for a pick, and then you can sort of know if you're being offered those types of things, like, oh, what's this guy's value? Like you're gonna have to drop him anyway. I'm not gonna give you anything for him, so you can kind of figure that out.
Yeah,
I love that format.
Yeah,
I mean, cutting to 16 is tough. You're at best cutting backup running. You're cutting the Kendre Millers sometimes. Backup running backs that you think might have an opportunity. But that's how that goes. And then they show up in the draft, which is interesting. Adam, you and I might have a couple decisions to make. We got to get on Mojo and figure out what to do.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I love looking at it. And you'd be surprised some of the people that are getting dropped. And I break it out between Superflex and 1 QB league too, because that's important in terms of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's one guy. Somebody dropped James Conner. 2 people dropped Jalen Warren. Like it's like, wow, I wish I was in that league. I could scoop some of these guys up.
Wow.
Which is
you had an interesting tweet about these dynasty leagues today, that there might be an opportunity in buying them, trading for picks and selling.
Yeah, I'm not that deep into it. I have just to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on. I play a little bit. There's guys who's just like there's turnover and they're buying and flipping the teams on Dynasty Depot, I guess, because some guy comes in and he like accumulates first round picks and then he vanishes like 2 weeks later. I'm like, where did he go? I thought he was going to build like a dynasty team though. It's like, no, he's just,
you got to get to a point where you have too many, or else having the picks is too much fun.
Well, the guy who buys 188 orphans, I mean, I don't even know. Like, that'd be an interesting conversation with him, what he's up to.
Somebody did that? Somebody got 188 orphans?
Yeah, if you go to the orphan page on FFPC, they track like the top 10 orphan purchaser. The top guy had 188 teams he bought.
Oh my God.
Like, that would be an interesting conversation or not. One of the two.
Daddy Warbucks. What's going on?
Adam and I have on the $500 in the $500 league we're in, we have picks 3, 4, and 7, and we have just been fending off this, all month, all off season.
That's right.
That's a nice position, but
Superflex too. So we're gonna get a couple of guys. Darren, what do you think about this new live dynasty draft in Vegas? Speaking of Vegas, are you going to Vegas? You're going to be there? Are you drafting in this thing or what?
Man, last year was rough, and this year's going to be even rougher. They have a game Thursday night and Friday night. Because I'm like trying to keep the guys in the room happy with updated ADP, but then I'm like at a draft table, and we'll see. But I don't know how they're going to do that dynasty. Like, what are you going to go tap somebody on the shoulder? Like, how do you trade picks?
That's what I was
all day long. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it might be a 12-hour draft.
They don't know either. But you can sign up. But
oh, no.
Adam thinks startup dynasty trading is the best. I think it's the worst. I would much sooner do it if there were no trades during the draft, and then everybody sort of plays the same board, and after that, trade all you want. That's better. Maybe that's what they'll have to do.
I think maybe they'll let you negotiate ahead of time, right? And then there's got to be something that maybe it'll be like the throw the yellow flag rule. Like you can stop the draft like 3 times to do a trade, but then that's it. Who knows what they'll do? But
that could take all day.
Yeah. The Friday night game is interesting because I think they removed those main event drafts from that window. The Eagles are going to play on the Friday night, and that's been a popular
They might have to
slot.
start
That's-
Wednesday this week. They might have to open up on Wednesday. Started a day early.
Yeah, I don't
Can't
know.
start soon enough.
So much suspense of what's going to happen. It's exciting.
Are you going to the expo, Darren, this year?
Yeah, I'll be at the expo for sure.
Yeah, baby.
Because that's in the same time zone as
That's
that helps.
That's right.
You'll make the drive through State College.
Yeah.
again this year.
Stop halfway. See the
Nick-
gang.
Give Nick Constantino and I a ride back to the hotel so we can drive.
Exactly. I mean, if I
last
didn't
year.
go to the expo, I don't know how you guys would get back and forth to.
That was the only time I saw you. The whole weekend was when you dropped Mike and Nick
Dropping
off.
me off. That's right.
Oh my god!
So we could draft best ball teams that finished 11th out of 12. Both of those teams. I don't know what happened to those teams. I loved them both, but I don't know. Unlucky. Like hitting the post in soccer.
That's right.
Okay, Darren. Great to connect with you tonight. Best of luck
Okay.
to you and tonight, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Talk to you later. See you.
Thanks for being with us in the deep end. Like and subscribe if you would. Our regular time slot, 8:30 Eastern on Tuesday nights, and we'll see you back here next week.
See you guys.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.